Have you ever felt like your year had kicked you down and broken you, like in the final tournament of Karate Kid, where you just wanted to give up and give in because you literally can't do any more? But then something happens and you get the confidence to get back out there and kick some butt. Trying to be PG here. Well, that was my year last year. And today we're going to look at 5 lessons that I learned in 2018. Welcome to another episode of This Indulgent Life, where together wanderlusting families navigate respectful parenting, education, and fulfilling our dreams of having an extraordinary life through travel. We believe that life shouldn't just be an obligation, and that the American dream isn't the same for everyone. We believe that life should be an indulgence, so cherished and enjoyed. And the best way to do that is through enjoying experiences together and following our hearts. May you be inspired to do the same. So at the beginning of the year, I wrote a blog post, maybe you've already seen it, on the 5 lessons I learned in 2018. And I really feel like they're good for any time of year. And so I really wanted to share them with you on the podcast and YouTube channel, depending on how you're listening to this. And I just feel like this is going to help you as you try to take that next step forward on your journey. Because remember, things are not going to always be easy. And even in the best of situations, you can get knocked out and dragged on, I don't know, whatever that's called. I'm obviously not very good with my sports metaphors here. But you get what I mean. Like, things are going to go wrong. And so these are the things that I've learned in 2018, and hopefully that I can remember in 2019 as we gear up for our new adventure, moving back to the US and renovating an Airstream, a completely gutted Airstream. I know that there is going to be big problems along the way, and I need to remember these lessons so that we can move forward and enjoy our life journey. So here they go. I'm going to use my phone to help me keep on track. Lesson number 1. Parenting is a never-ending game of strategy and luck. Like, you have to go in with a strategy, but you also have to be flexible enough to just kind of accept things as they come, because what works one day isn't going to work the next. So sometimes you feel like you are superwoman, superman, and you are like the person who just slayed the latest dragon, and then other times you feel like you are the dragon. It's a never-ending cycle. And if you grew up like me with a lot of authoritarian parenting and background, you are a hero, because changing your mindset to go from expecting like super obedience to nurturing the independence in your child is not for the faint of heart. It is difficult, especially when little people have really big feelings and you don't understand where it came from whatsoever. But I wouldn't change this connection I have with my son for anything. I know that when he's like struggling with something, that if he feels comfortable and safe coming to me for help, and that is just an amazing feeling, to get that hug when he's scared, and to know that he trusts me is huge. And I hope I can continue to grow and improve in my parenting, and that he forgives all the mistakes that I am daily making. But as parents, we do our best, and we have to remember that some days things are going to go really, really well, and some days you just need a redo or an end and start again the next day. And it's okay to apologize, because again, things can change in an instant, and what worked yesterday may not work tomorrow. And in fact, what worked an hour ago may not work right now. So you have to be more flexible. And I'm trying to remember, I may not have all the right words yet. And if I can just pause for a second and take a deep breath and remind myself, one of my mantras, like, he's having a hard time, he's not giving me a hard time, or little people, big feelings, one of those types of things, that, or even just he's learning, we all have bad days, he just wants to know I'm here for him. Deep breath, release, and then try to go through it. I don't always have the right words. Sometimes all I can do is just not yell, or not say, you're fine, get over it, just move on. So that's what I'm trying to do. Lesson number 2, adult relationships. They're even harder than the parenting relationship sometimes. I grew up kind of constantly afraid of how I was affecting other people, and was I annoying them, or were they talking behind my back? It's not, it just goes through your head. It's an anxiety thing, I guess. But I have just gotten to the point where I was assuming that somebody was upset with me, and I had to remember that it's not always about me, and just because it seems like they're avoiding me, something else may actually be going on. So I've had to learn to kind of step up a little bit and actually have a bit of conflict, like talk to people and take that step and be brave enough to see if I actually did do something wrong, or if it's just all in my head. And typically the situation that I'm specifically remembering, it was a friend of mine, and we were having a conversation about marriage, and she wasn't married, and she is one of those people that, she's positive and upbeat, and she always likes to see things from a different angle, which I used to be. And I got really mad at her because she just seemed to be kind of blowing over the issues I was having. And she had to leave, I had to leave, and that kind of ended it. And we kind of didn't talk to each other really, and I thought maybe she was avoiding me, and it turns out she thought I was avoiding her. And she was also having a really bad week, and it just escalated, right? And I could have just gotten mad and talked about her to somebody else, like evidently somebody else did with her, and she just looked at me and went, thank you so much for just coming and talking to me, because I don't want you to think that I am mad at you, and so on. So that's a lesson that I've learned, is that sometimes you just kind of gotta suck it up and you gotta ask. So you just kind of gotta put yourself out there and risk actually dealing with a problem, right? And with marriage, that's even harder. But it's a continuous lesson. All right, so lesson number 3. 1, 2, 3. Hardships will happen. It's just, what are you going to learn from them? Because I can guarantee you that no matter what amazing place you live in or you're visiting, no matter what experiences you're having, quote unquote bad things are going to happen, and you are going to feel miserable for a moment. You're going to go through like the 5 stages of grief, and you're going to have to work things out. So what are you just going to learn from that? And this year for us, or last year, 2018, oh man, that was bad. There were a lot of things that we had to overcome, between finances and health and marriage and just so many things. And honestly, I really wish God would just kind of give me a nice easy year, but I can guarantee you that's not going to happen. So So lesson 3 is, what are you going to learn? How can you look at your problems as opportunities, and then move forward? For example, my husband lost his job right before Christmas, and we were counting on that money to be able to move us back to the US and start our new amazing adventure. And so now we're having to rework all of our plans. We had major health issues where I was in and out of hospital and doctor offices for 6 weeks. My husband was in the hospital. We had to move suddenly. We didn't get that like 5,000 US dollars back from our deposit, and we were expecting that, and that was a big ordeal. There's just so many things. But instead of wallowing in it, now don't get me wrong, we did go through our grief process and everything that you would expect. We did feel those feelings and work through that process. I'm not sitting here months later still, wallowing necessarily. Sometimes I do have my moments, but I'm trying to learn from it. So when my husband no longer had a job, we looked at it like, okay, this is a great opportunity for you to go ahead and start your video editing business. So when we had all of those financial issues with not getting our deposit back, having to get a loan for this place, dealing with credit card debt I didn't even realize that we had, I realized that it was time for me to take charge and for us to stop just letting life live by, right? Like not letting it just control us, but for us to finally control it. And through that, we were able to come up with a plan. We were able to get out of debt, and we were able to start planning for our future, for spending more time as a family and moving back home to live life on the road. Now, we still have lots of challenges ahead for us, and it is not going to be easy, and there are a lot of things, like a lot of obstacles in our path. But I know that I can learn from these mistakes and I can move forward from them. And that instead of just wallowing in it, I can make a plan of action, learn from it, and move on. So if you are one of those people that tend to like freak out over every major thing that happened, because I think most of us have, and you don't really know how to move forward, I actually came up with a 5-step process to help you move through the pain of hardships. Ready? You ready for this? Step number 1, have your freak out. Who says that when you have a major event happen in your life, whether it's a death or a heavy financial loss, that you can't still freak out? Like, you can learn from these mistakes and you can learn from this and you can move on and still succeed, but you still got to go through that process, right? You still have to feel those emotions and release it in a healthy way. So have that mini freak out. I realize that this is probably not going to be in any self-help book, but I know my brain and I know that I need a moment to freak out. Now, the key here though is to give yourself a time limit, and it's kind of arbitrary, depends on the circumstance, depends on you, but let's just say 30 minutes. Give yourself 30 minutes to just be like, oh my God, what just happened? Let yourself feel that. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging you are freaking out, that this is crazy and you don't know how you're going to deal with it, and you're stressed, you're worried. Admit that, but don't let it go on too long. So step number 2, identify your feelings and their sources. So I totally stole this from parenting books that I read, and I really think that this will help give you a sense of control. And if you're like me, when bad things happen, you need to feel a little bit of control again because everything else is outside of your control. But I really do think it helps to acknowledge what's going on. So for example, you might say, I am terrified that I am not going to be able to feed my family because of X, Y, and Z. Now, that's probably worst case scenario and it's probably not going to happen. But that's what you're worried about, right? Like fear and anxiety aren't logical. So it helps to voice it and really kind of get control over, this is what I'm worried about, so what can I do about it? So step number 3, take a step back. You've had your freak out. You've named it. You know exactly what you're feeling and why you're feeling that way, the source of your fear. And now it's time to take a step back. I don't know if you're like me, but when I start freaking out, I kind of can start spiraling and feel like Bill and Joe from Twister, where they're like hanging on to a pipe in the ground by a belt in a massive F5 tornado. And your body's like flying everywhere and you have no control. Well, that's when we need to take a step back, right? So you've identified what's going on, and now it's time to really assess. So what I end up doing is I look at, okay, this is what's going on. What are the immediate effects of this? And how can I kind of negate those effects or diminish them in some way? What can I do to help the situation? And then I try to remind myself, no one is dead. Doesn't always help, just being real, but sometimes it does. No one died. So that's a good thing. So, life can move on because no one died. So if somebody did die, I'm sorry, but so that's not going to work for you. But for financial issues or when things don't happen the way you expect, like job loss, you can remind yourself things can move on. So step 4 is reflect. Now this is a super important step. Do not miss this step. But be careful that you don't end up back in step 1 where you're freaking out. And don't call people names. Don't do the blame game. Just look at what happened and see what you can learn from it, right? So, when it came back to our finances, I'm going to be completely honest. That was our fault. We did not have a plan for our finances and we weren't really talking about it. I just knew that I had X amount extra per month and that if we bought this or that it wouldn't be a big deal. But I wasn't realizing what my spouse was spending, and he didn't realize what was going on. Like, we just were not in control of our finances. We were not paying attention to them like we should. We were both wrong in that. So neither one of us hold all the blame, and you should not get into that blaming mode. But know that, you know what, I didn't do this, and so in the future this is what I need to do, right? Like, I know that we're having this problem because of this, okay? And then what can I do about it for the future? Now, if you are going through a hardship that is not of your own making, like a family member dies, or you have a miscarriage, or you suddenly got fired and you didn't do anything wrong, it's just a company went under or something, please, like, you can reflect on how to handle things maybe, but you can't control that. So don't make yourself think like you can. There are situations where you can do nothing different. You have a miscarriage, there's nothing that you could have done, most likely. So you just need to let that go and don't let yourself feel blamed for that, because there's none to be had. Okay, so then step 5, your final step for overcoming hardships, learn and fix. So you reflected, you know what happened, and now is the time to learn from it and fix it moving forward. So at the beginning of the year of 2018, we had a financial crisis, but we didn't learn from it. We just kind of moved forward, and then we ended up in hot water again, and very fast, actually. That's when I did these 5 steps and we made a plan and we moved forward, and then we've been good ever since. So if you just see, oh yeah, we're having this problem, but then continue life as normal, not gonna happen. You're still going to go through these hardships and not be able to move on from them, right? Like, it's just gonna happen over and over and over again. So you need to make sure that not only do you know what happened and how it made you feel and what your fears are, but you now can create a plan of action to help yourself in the future. All right, moving on back to the lessons that we learned in 2018. Lesson number 4, joy is found in the simple moments. You know, all of us here, we're people that want to travel and to explore grand places and see new things. But you know what? As amazing as that is, and it's really amazing when you can do it together as a family, it's those small moments that really bring joy. It's the look of wonder on your child's face, or the laugh when you like put your noses together or touch their nose and say boop and they start just cracking up, or when your friend brings you a cookie for no reason. It's these small moments that kind of bring you joy and that you should cherish. And one way I'm trying to do that better in 2019 is I created a bullet journal, and every day I try to remember to write one thing I'm grateful for, and I try to remember those small things that brought me joy. That way when I am having a hard time, I can go back and remember the things that I am grateful for. The small things really do add up over time. And finally, lesson number 5, you only fail if you give up permanently. Okay? Like, you are not failing if you just kind of had to take a break. So for example, last summer, 2018, I had big plans for the blog and the vlog. It was summer vacation, so I had lots of time and I knew exactly what I wanted to do and I had a plan, and then school started. And I thought I was gonna have 4 hours almost every day to do work on my computer during my commute. And I quickly learned I did not have that time unless I wanted to throw up on my computer. So I didn't get the blog post done, and I was crazy busy writing new lesson plans and unit plans and life and commuting and everything. And 1 week turned into 1 month, turned into I don't even know how many months, 4 or 5 months of no real content coming out. And it was really, really hard to get back to it because I felt like I had let everyone down. And even though I don't have a huge following at that time, I felt, the people that did invest in me, I wasn't investing in them again. And I had let them down. And if I were to restart now, I'd have to face that. And I could have given up. And for some people that is needed because they need to focus on something else in their life. But I didn't give up permanently. So I haven't actually failed because I made a plan in 2019 and I have mostly stuck with it. Being ill kind of sets me back sometimes, but I created habits to help me complete my plan, and I'm realizing that, you know what, setbacks happen, obstacles happen, but as long as you recover from them, as long as you get back out there, that's what matters. I guess you could think about it like a sports person, whether it's soccer, football, basketball, whatever. They're going to get injured and they're gonna have to take time off. But the key is, do they give up and just say, well, I can never do this again? Or do they train and recuperate and then get better? Or do they train and recuperate and get themselves back out on that field, court, whatever? Like, that's what's important. So if you feel like you have just not been good enough and that you have failed at whatever you have been trying to do, whether it's a new business or a health goal or whatever it is, just know you can always start again. There's nothing stopping you from starting again. So please do. And if you want some help with trying to find your next adventure, your family's next journey and experiences, then please do contact me. I'm really wanting to help families find their own path. And if you need help with that, please do contact me. So that's the end of this episode. The 5 lessons as well as 5 steps to overcoming hardships. I really hope you enjoyed this and got something out of it. Please do subscribe so you can get all of the upcoming episodes automatically downloaded, and leave an honest review in iTunes. That will help me to be a better podcaster, and it helps other people find this podcast. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.